Hi, welcome to this time-lapsed version of my full stream on Twitch. I've been making a scene that looks like the one in the top right here, a little LastNinja scene, the wall climbing event, and I'm just getting set up using the 4:1 ratio grid that the game used. Not quite isometric, but more kind of tilted down, kind of flatter view. I really like that ratio. So here I'm just making a brick wall in Photoshop that I'm going to use as an asset. I'll include this asset as part of the pack. You can make your own little scene, add loads of walls and rocks between them and things like that. So I'm using the color coding, black being the base tone, pure blue being the next tone, and then any green or red tones I can add in. Now the idea is you want to use additive so that you retain each of those channels. Red, green and blue have got their own masks, and you just want to make sure that you retain those. So different tones of blue on that base black tone is going to give me two tones that I can play with, and here I'm adding some red tone so that I've got a third tone to play with. And you can see where this is going. If I add green, I basically have black, blue, red and green in that order. They kind of overlap each other in that order. The reason for that is blue looks the darkest to our eye compared to red, and then green looks lighter than red. It just seems to be one of those things, but that's why I guess things that are cooler coloured, they get pushed to the back a bit, and things that are warmer like red or green or yellow, they kind of come more forward. So here I've put the wall inside background designer, and I'm starting to customize the colours based on those RGB masks, and you can see I get a lot of variation with this. I can even choose to not have any of those using those sliders there, like the green one, bringing in the moss. So I'm just positioning the reference image, and I'm just going to trace where that wall is. I'm not too worried about the little ninja guy. Imagine he was a separate sprite, and you just have to make him work with the scene. You might have to chop bits up if there's bits that need to overlap. I'm just using what little brushes I have in this alpha version to try and make this grass. Now there is kind of enough brushes there to do anything you want, but it's quite limiting, to be honest. And this is just a proof of concept that everything works. There's no bugs or crashes or errors coming up now. There's a couple of little minor bugs that won't take me long to fix, and then everything after that is just features on top, and there's quite a lot of those to come. Yeah, there's a cool feature in background designer right now where you can plot these brushes down and then undo to a certain point where you maybe put something in the wrong place. Then you would undo that one, and then basically put a new brush down to replace it, and then redo all your steps, or just press enter and it will just like redraw everything up to the point where you left off. So you can kind of replace history. Now I'm a huge fan of this game, LastNinja. I've been anticipating them remaking it. I attempted a remake myself back in 2015, I think, and I kind of got into trouble a bit for trying to remake the game without permission or anything like that, and I had no idea that the company was still around. 30 years later, 25, maybe 20 years later, they're still around. And yeah, I was just kind of taken aback by that, but I think there was the hope that I would come up with a game that was the almighty ultimate ninja game, but I was just trying to make a fan art game back then, and yeah, I was told not to because the people that be in charge of this game were making it themselves, and they didn't want to confuse the IP, so I took everything down, shut everything down, and just went on my merry way and waited, as we all did. And 5 years later, we've still not really heard anything, so we're a little bit alienated and whatnot. Either they're coming up with a really good game and it's taken longer because they're slowly injecting money into it, or they're still trying to raise funds, or they're still trying to pitch it to fundraisers. I have no idea. All I've seen is a couple of concept pieces and the promise that it might be getting made. I'm still a huge fan of the game. I still want to do a fan-based remake and a VR version, and get it onto like Switch and all these things with new revamped graphics, more moves, more story. Really push things as much as they pushed things back then. Big fan of the game. Okay, so I'm just starting to spruce things up. This is the point where I go back in history and decide I want to make this wall different. So I've undid all the way back to where that wall was placed. It was basically one of the first plots. So I'm way back at the first plot here, and I'm plotting it down and thinking, does that look good? Redo it a few times until it works, and I'm happier with the contrast of it now. I think I also went back into Photoshop and added more detail. Basically replaced the original wall brush and reloaded Background Designer, and it basically just loads that new version of the brush back in. Exact same file. It just hunts that file down and loads it. So you can go back and change brushes. Just bear in mind, if you change a brush and you've used it for another background and you load it back up to do a change, that's also going to get the changed brush. So in some cases you might want to make a copy. I'm using some rock drawings that I did. I've been practicing with different styles, like hand drawn style, digital painted style, taking a photograph of something, borrowing some art from somewhere online to see how it looks in that style, and everything kind of works in its own way. It just depends how you mix it up in the end. Still keeping to a kind of semi-stylized look. I don't want it to look photorealistic by any means. I want this to look slightly cartoonish and pleasing to the eye. That's my thing. I like things to look pretty and still work in the end aesthetically. I'm not a fan of 3D models turned into 2D images, like the sort of pre-rendered look. I think that's very dated looking. A game that did it really well was Factorio, and a System 3 game they recently remade, Constructor. I think they did a really good job of it as well. So sometimes it kind of works, but it's the bit of detail that it ends up with is really kind of sharp and busy. Whereas if you hand paint it, you've got control of that. And that's why I like this tool, because I've pre-made these assets with that in mind. I don't want them to be too sharp and too bitty like a photograph, so I definitely don't like trying to bring those in. I want to hand paint all these brushes and later get other artists to make packs that will work with this pack. It wouldn't be hard really, you just have to think about images and then come up with that colour masking system, which isn't too difficult. If you work in Photoshop with the solid colours, I forget what you call it, but it's the one where you get the little kind of colour swatch and you can change it, and you basically just paint in the mask. Well, you can paint as normal with your base colour, then 3 colours on top, and all I would do is swap them out for black, blue, red and green, make them additive, and that would be it. That would then come into Background Designer as something you can customize. You can change those colors up. So yeah, the premise behind this was to learn shaders properly, to learn how to use surfaces better in Background Designer, and lately I've managed to get a fix for the dreaded opacity issue, that Game Maker has. It tends to stain anything with opacity in it the same color as the surface. But a guy by the name of different name from the Game Maker Discord, he helped out with his multi-pass shader thing. It basically takes two textures and swaps them about and calculates the right opacity that Photoshop would kind of do, and it's perfect. It's working so much better, and actually saved this a bit. You can see there was 3 images appeared at the bottom there. That was me turning on the wrap mode. If you press W, it will basically find any brushes that are near the edge and just make sure they're copied to the other side, and it kind of attempts to make a tileable background. But in a scene like this, that's impossible, but it's just fun to see it. I'm using a lot of the opacity sliders. So you can see on the left above the force watches it says transparency amount or mixer. Basically you can move that to the left, all the way to the left, so that if you turn the amount dials down of each of those 4 colors, they basically become transparent. You can be left with some nice textures. Or it's a good way of isolating just one of those tones. And then there's the mixer one at the bottom, which basically goes between the original colours that they were made with and the RGB sort of masking shader. It's all driven through one shader basically, and I'm learning how to code these shaders, and finally, after a long time just putting it off, usually use like node based shaders like Unreal Engine's Material or Amplify shader, and from them I've learnt a lot of the logic, but it's actually typing the code that I've been learning lately. Okay, so I've brought this into Photoshop now. I'm doing a few little things to the colours. I want to bring in some shadows for that wall and just making it look a bit more cohesive. Yeah, that's quite good. And I think I also do a little pixel art thing on it here. So this is the image in 640 by 400, and then I turn it into my pseudo Commodore 64 version 2, which is basically double all the colours of a real Commodore, and make it look like this. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. You can get Background Designer on itch. Bye for now.